Mike. I hang my golf clubs on a hook reserved for them in my garage. Golf is my way of enjoying time alone with myself. I rarely play golf with friends. Occasionally, I'll be out on the grassy lawns having a match with a business associate, but more often than not, on Sundays, I just pick a course I haven't played in a while and book my tee time. I always hope to play a game alone, but most of the time I find myself paired with other golfers. The fact that I don't know the other players intimately helps me stay on my own wavelength and enjoy the game. That's exactly what I like about golf. Admittedly, I'm not the best golfer, but I usually finish the game with a score of about 11 over par 1. What I am truly good at is the short game. I rarely miss the green 2 from 150 yards. But the driving 3, well, that's where it gets tricky. Hit or miss. One week my ball goes right where it needs to go, and the next I have to scramble all day to get out of the sand trap. Well, I think you fellow golfers know what I mean. So I walked from the garage into the kitchen to wash my hands and have a beer. And while doing so, I heard my wife's voice through the open kitchen window talking to someone on the phone. Last summer we put a pool in the backyard, and my wife just loved it. On the hottest days of the summer, she would either swim in it, lay out sunbathing nearby, or just lounge in a chair under the shade of the trees next to the pool. I loved watching her in these moments because she'd put on her smallest bikini and, oh my God, what a sight! Every time I wanted to rip those tiny, tight bikinis off her and pounce on her right there on the pool deck. But what I heard through the window made me freeze in place and sharpened all my senses to the extreme. Yeah, we're all gonna have to wear tight bikinis, just like the ones we wore on spring break in college. You remember how all the boys reacted to us? Ah ha ha! Yeah, it's gonna be so much fun to tease our boys and make fun of them for sure. Yeah. Maybe some of the boys will get an erection like they did on vacation and have to hide in the water until it goes away. And then we'll know which one of them has the biggest buddy. With that last sentence, she giggled. I agree, it'll be so much fun. She excitedly continued her conversation on the phone. What? Yeah, I know I may be a rascal, but it'll be great fun for us girls. Uh-oh. Wow, that would be a real hoot. Ha ha ha, I can already see it. Which one do you think we should do it with? My husband? Well, no doubt he'll be angry, but I'm already laughing just thinking about it. Okay, all right, I'll do it. Well, I gotta go. Mike's gonna be back from his golf outing soon, and we're gonna grill something. Yeah. And then we're gonna relax by the pool. Oh, I just love Sunday nights. Mike? Well, after a full week of work and chores on Saturdays, he likes to play golf on Sunday, and I, like to do nothing. Anyway, this pool is a great way to relax. I'm reading, sunbathing. I'm just getting high. Okay, come on, I can't wait to see all of you. Bye-bye, bye-bye. My wife's voice was silent, but only at that moment I realized that I had been involuntarily holding my breath all this time, and I took a long, slow exhalation. What was she talking about? What was she going to do that was supposed to be incredibly funny? It certainly sounded like whatever it was, she was planning on doing it to me. And it looked like I was going to be laughed at. Now, I want to talk a little bit about my childhood. Lisa and I have been married for 6 years. I met her in college, and I won't bore you with the details. I'll just say that I hit on her for 3 years of college and married Lisa a month before our senior year. After the wedding, we rented a small one-bedroom apartment off campus, and all of our friends envied us. We were truly in love with each other, and it still is to this day. Most of our college friends one by one broke up into couples and got married within a year or two of graduation. Since Lisa and I were married before anyone else, we were considered the oldest married couple in our peer group. Our group of college friends, more accurately, it was more of a group of Lisa's girlfriends with their husbands, collectively decided that instead of going to a 5th anniversary graduation reunion, we would chip in and rent a house on the beach for the weekend. I thought this was a good idea, since I myself couldn't boast of having many friends while I was in college. Besides playing on the soccer team to justify my athletic scholarship and studying hard to double major in business and accounting, all of my free time was spent just on my girlfriend. It was all I wanted to do: soccer, studying, and Lisa. Lisa herself was different. She intended to get a degree in psychology, and it seemed that studying came easily to her without any effort. It just came naturally to her. Sure, she had psychology papers to write, but most of the time she had free time to hang out with friends. And she was always busy doing one thing or another with some girl from her dorm. After we got married my senior year, that didn't change much, but whenever I wasn't playing soccer or in class, she and I would spend time together. So Lisa's 5 college friends, along with their husbands, were planning a weekend getaway that was due in 2 weeks. They rented a 6-bedroom house near the beach and planned a 3-day weekend for the whole bunch. I knew all the women, the wife's girlfriends, and 1 or 2 of the husbands. The reunion was supposed to be a positive escape from work for me, but it would be even more fun for Lisa, since they were mostly her friends. We husbands were to hang out, swim, grill yummy things, and drink beer. But what was the significance of the phrase that the girls would wear revealing bikinis and try to turn us on? To what end? I guess they'd be trying to reminisce about their wild college years. I've always tried my best to avoid awkward situations, and Lisa knew that. I mean, who among you wants to get into an unpleasant, embarrassing embarrassment in public? But as for me, I was a lot more sensitive than most people. When we were still dating in college, I told Lisa about a humiliating experience in my childhood when my mother had embarrassed me as a child many times. My mother had a private in-home daycare center. Other mothers would bring and leave their children with us for the day. There were 4 or 5 of them at all times. They were both girls and boys, some older and others younger than me. The oldest of them was never more than 12 years old. When I was a kid, my mother, to embarrass me and intensify the punishment, would pull down my pants and spank my bare ass in public when I misbehaved. She'd give 3 or 4 hard, swaggering spanks, and she didn't seem to care who was watching. Very often, as I pulled up my pants after the expletives, I would look around and see the girls staring at me. Some of them had smirks on their faces. Others covered their mouths with their hands in embarrassment, trying not to laugh. There were some who shamelessly pointed their fingers at me and pushed each other, laughing openly. I've only seen my mother 3 times since I went to college. For the summer, I took a job on campus just so I wouldn't have to go home. For the other vacations that fell through, I always planned to go camping or skiing or something like that for a week. Each time, I had an excuse to avoid being at my parents' house. Can you blame me for that? I didn't really hate my mother. I just had no desire to ever be around her again. Of course, I couldn't completely avoid contact with my own mother, so I answered her calls about once a month. She always asked how I was doing and wanted to know all the details about my life. For example, recently she has been pestering me with questions about when I would finally give her grandchildren. Speaking of which, after my father retired, she stepped away from the home childcare business and now claimed she wanted to look after her own little grandchildren. So she made the emphatic point, in an appropriate tone, that I should hustle in that direction. Holy cow, I hardly think I would ever bring my kids to her house, but I just changed the topic of conversation to avoid that problem. Just grinned and nodded. Never saying no, but never making a clear commitment either. That was my principle of interaction. You see, aside from embarrassment, I hate getting into any kind of conflict situation. I try to avoid conflict at all costs. If my wife and I have a disagreement about something, I usually just shut up and let her talk it out. It's not that I agree with her, it's just that for me to argue my point of view until I'm blue in the face or to confront her, it's not worth it. Some might say I'm weak for not confronting her. I can say it's the easiest way for me to go through life. In fact, I don't really care what anyone else thinks. Anyway, when I was growing up, my mother did other unpleasant and hurtful things to embarrass me. Well, I hope you get the point. All of this caused me to react very acutely and painfully to situations of my own embarrassment or humiliation, especially if it happened in front of women. So as I walked out the back door to the pool, my mind was in turmoil, wondering exactly what my wife had planned to do at this weekend's reunion. "Hi, honey," Lisa greeted me with a friendly wave from her lounge chair. "How was your golf outing?" "It was okay. Finished 5 over par. I couldn't miss a driver today, so it was a good round." I said these words, trying to keep a casual, almost carefree tone, while my brain was stubbornly saying, "Stay calm, stay calm." "Who were you talking to on the phone?" I asked my wife. "Oh, I didn't know you were already home." She hesitated for a second, but then she got control of herself and her voice. I was just talking to Angie, my former roommate from when we were in college. We're making plans for a reunion weekend. Ah, I see, I muttered, rubbing the back of my neck with the palm of my hand that was slightly aching from golf. I'm going to take a shower and grill a couple burgers. I'll see you a little later. I won't bore you with the story of what happened over the next 2 weeks, but things were fine between us. My wife and I had sex a couple times a week, and it was always great. Lisa still looks like a very attractive woman now, having not gained a single extra gram since college. She still weighs just over 60 pounds, boasts a 3-piece bust, and has a luscious ass that is so nice to watch from behind as it bounces and jiggles as she walks. Guilty, I can't resist patting Lisa's ass every time I pass her in the kitchen, or anywhere else for that matter. She chastises me if I do it too blatantly in public, but I just tell her that the way I'm attracted to her is beyond me, and that her beautiful ass is the only one I, as a husband, have the right to spank. So I exercise my spousal privileges when I can. She never really gets mad about it. I think secretly she even likes it. Anyway, on Friday, we all started flocking to the rented house by the beach at different times. Some of the earlier arrivals had time to sunbathe, while others didn't show up until after dinner. All in all, we had a great evening sitting around the campfire, relaxing, drinking beer, and reminiscing about stories from our college years, and then sharing stories with each other about what we all did after college. So far, only one couple had had a baby. Everyone else said they weren't planning on having kids for at least another 4 or 5 years. Coincidentally, Lisa and I recently talked about becoming a full-fledged family, and as a result of the discussion, we decided we were ready to take that step, so she stopped taking birth control. Well, after all, we were the longest married couple among all of our friends after all. Saturday came and we started the morning with a leisurely activity that our women had planned and then occupied the beach all day, where we again sunbathed, swam, and slayed the beer supply. I was surprised to see all the ladies wearing rather modest swimsuits on this first day of full vacation. After unwittingly overhearing my wife planning the weekend on the phone with Angie, I had thought they would all be flaunting their bikinis with thongs. Heck, I'd love to see our ladies in mini bikinis. Hand on heart, they were all quite pretty girls. The only thing I didn't really want was all the guys ogling my wife in such a revealing outfit. Yeah, I agree. It's clearly a double standard, but so what? After another relaxing evening of grilling, drinking, joke-telling, and intellectual conversation, we all headed to the side by 10 o'clock. I know us, old married folks, are kind of supposed to go to bed at 10. Of course, because it's not those wild and crazy college days anymore. There were lots of sex sounds in our house that Saturday night, but most of us heard nothing, as we all made love to our spouses and then promptly fell asleep. Yep, spending all day in the sun, complete with a percussive dose of booze, takes a lot of energy away from your body and guarantees a good night's sleep. Sunday started out as a carbon copy of Saturday until we got to the beach in the afternoon. Our women sent all of us guys down to the beach to spread out blankets, prepare coolers with drinks, and set up umbrellas, and they said they would be down to join us in a minute. Nothing out of the ordinary. It takes the guy about 3 seconds to pull on his swim trunks, and then we're all popping out the door. The only weird thing was that I couldn't find my swim trunks anywhere. Rummaging around the room, I asked Lisa if she knew where they were because I thought I had left them on the side of the tub yesterday. She shrugged and said she hadn't seen my swim trunks, but it was a good thing she'd picked up some spare ones for me. I thanked her, immediately got into them, and went to catch up with the other guys. You know, it takes women a lot longer to get ready to go out, even if they're going to the beach. They have to put on sunscreen, make sure their hair is nicely styled. Oh, and they have to find their missing sunglasses. And how about some elegant shoes to match the swimsuit? Well, you know what I mean. So the men went ahead and set up our afternoon beach spot. The wives were to follow. When our ladies appeared, all of us guys dropped our jaws and seemed speechless. 6 wives stood before us, moving like runway models and showing off their assets covered in very revealing micro-bathing suits. Almost completely naked breasts and asses glistened and swirled before our bewildered eyes. There was so much tantalizing female flesh that if we had been on a public beach, I'm afraid these girls in their tight little covering strips of cloth would have been arrested. As they got closer, 3 of the ladies had very visible camel socks and 4 of them were wearing thong panties that left no room for imagination when you looked at their asses. Angie was the first to speak. "The girls and I thought you guys deserved a sweet treat for being such good husbands. Besides, we have a lot of properties here and here." She stroked her breasts with languid smoothness, then slid her hands across her waist to her hips and finally slapped her buttocks. "That need a good tan, so we thought we'd put on a show for you this afternoon. Anyone want to object?" Raising her eyebrows, with a smile of realization of her superiority, she looked around at all of us. We guys all seemed to go numb, unable to speak at the sight of her. In any case, we tried our best not to stare at not our wives, trying to behave as usual. All I can say is that one of the ladies had stunning breasts. They were much larger than Lisa's, and they were covered, or rather tried to be covered, by little triangle bikinis that couldn't even fully hide her large areolae underneath. Such a top on thin straps and ties did not support anything, so her bust bounced and swayed at any movement, and when she bent over, sagged low, threatening to tear the ropes holding these hills. Looking at such splendor, one had to constantly struggle to keep up. At some point in the afternoon, all the girls decided to play paddleball. You know the game where you each have a racket and you toss a rubber ball between players? The goal is to see how many times you can hit the ball before it falls and touches the ground. Well, the little ball did fly here and there, but along with it our eyes were filled with large female roundnesses, bouncing, dangling, spinning, and occasionally falling out from under tiny pieces of cloth. Very often our ladies had to stop and put back in place the top from under which the breasts popped out to freedom, or pull out of the gap between the halves of the ass clogged and disappeared their thong. It was too much for me. Concerned, I looked around at the other guys and saw that they too seemed to be struggling with the natural reaction of healthy male bodies. But I myself was already halfway to raging arousal. Before I was finally embarrassed, I got up and headed for the pool as if nothing had happened. Stepping into the water a little above my waist, I turned around to continue watching the show on the beach. Barely turning around, I froze in place in confusion when I saw that all activity on the beach had instantly stopped, and the eyes of all the girls were fixed on me. A wide grin spread across each of the wives' faces. "What are you all looking at?" Perplexed, I asked them, shifting my gaze from one to the other. Instead of answering, my wife asked a counter-question. "Why are you alone in the water?" "Well, I just decided I wanted to cool off. Why do you care?" I responded incomprehensibly. "It's just that you wouldn't be in the water if you weren't horny, and I guess you didn't want us all to see that. Did you, Mike?" Lisa proclaimed loudly enough for everyone around her to hear, still smiling broadly. Everyone else had either understanding smiles on their faces, mostly on the guys, or wide grins on the women's side of the group. A few of them were chin up, some of them even moved a little closer, and everyone was watching the developments with great interest. I felt the heat rush to my face. It blazed, and a wave of confusion began to roll over me from the inside. At least some of the women seemed to notice that I'd started adjusting my swim trunks, trying to hide my erection as I walked toward the pool. "No, of course not," I lied. Purely instinctively, I put my hand in the water to cover my really still somewhat tense genitals, and there I was, waiting for bull show. And then I got a big surprise. Where had my swim trunks gone? My gaze darted downward, and I was startled to see that one part of my briefs was floating in the water, and the other was still clinging to my leg. And that's where, suddenly, I realized everything. Lisa had specifically bought what she called disappearing swim trunks for me. That must have been what she was talking about on the phone with Angie when she said, "This is going to be a real hoot." In that instant, the pieces of the puzzle came together. My wife had either decided to play a prank on me, or her friends had put her up to it, so that I would be the one husband who would be the one to get the water-dissolving swim trunks. My stricken brain was sending out signals in those seconds, as if everything in the world around me had slowed down, all sounds had disappeared, and instead of feeling the hot sun, ice needles were pricking my back. In my cotton wool-covered ears, I heard only the deafening thumping of my own heart. I looked up at the shore and saw all the women there laughing silently, pointing their fingers at me. Two of the guys were laughing too, and a couple others looked like they didn't realize what was going on. Everything was happening as if in silent slow motion, but my brain was working at 1,000 miles a minute. And there I was, again, amidst a crowd of strangers and a lot of other people's eyes, plunged into one of my childhood nightmares, only now as an adult. All the seemingly long-forgotten horrible feelings, panic, burning shame, and the pain of humiliation trampling my consciousness came back again, overwhelming me like a ninth wave. My wife, the woman who was supposed to have my back in times of need, the one with whom I had shared my true feelings about what my mother had done to me as a child, the one who was supposed to love and respect me, had set me up, forcing me to remain naked under a hail of ridicule, and moreover, laughing with others at my public shame. The enormous weight of embarrassment and humiliation, such as I had experienced at a young age, fell back on my shoulders, pressing my self-esteem down with a merciless pressure. In a microsecond, my mind told me that I would never forgive Lisa for this devious, disgusting stunt, just as I had never forgiven my mother for her mangled childhood. Nothing she could have said to me would have changed my attitude. It was right then and there, standing waist-deep in the water, that I gritted my teeth and decided that, okay, I should finally get it over with once and for all. There was no point in prolonging my embarrassment and shame any longer. No point in continuing to stand in the water naked and increase my own humiliation. So I yanked the rest of the swim trunks off, and it flew off my leg with a slight pop. Tossing the useless piece of cloth aside, I raised my head and, looking straight ahead, began to slowly walk out of the water, remaining completely naked. All the women seemed to start shouting something, but it was as if I was in some sort of detached trance, not looking at any of them or hearing any of the sounds they were making. When I got to the shore, I just kept walking toward the house with slow, measured steps. Each time another brick fell out of the seemingly solid foundation of my marriage. And even though my face was burning, I was still looking only at myself. Lisa stopped laughing only to shout after me, "What the hell are you doing?" Paying no attention to her shout, I just kept walking toward the house. When I got there, I went up to our bedroom, put on shorts and light shoes, grabbed my wallet and car keys, and walked out the front door. As I drove out of the parking lot, I didn't look back once, so I had no idea if any of the company was rushing after me or not. I just drove home. Lisa, "That went pretty much as we planned," I giggled to myself. All the girls, and me along with the rest of them, were twirling and bouncing around in our tight-fitting swimsuits, and the guys were trying their best to hide their excitement. Mike was the first to rush into the water to cool off, and the disappearing bathing suit I had bought worked just as well as advertised. It was obvious to all of us girls how shocked he was when he put his hand down and felt his swim trunks literally dissolve into the water before his eyes. His face reflected alternately all sorts of emotions: shock, surprise, shame, and something else I couldn't recognize. And then he just stood up and stepped out of the water, walking past all of us girls and toward the house. We were all stunned. And by the way, I was a little annoyed that he walked so unceremoniously past all my friends with his device swinging freely in all directions. After all, he was my husband after all, and I was the only one who could see him naked. However, I even got a few comments from the girls about, "How lucky you are to have a stud like Mike," and "Damn, girl, and he's got a great set." My original plans were to have our little banter and then, after a minute, go down to the water and give Mike his old, regular swim trunks that I had in my beach bag. He would then get out of the water as if nothing had happened. And after a few inevitable ha-has and he-he's, we'd continue to relax as a group. We could all see that the guys were thrilled to see us girls all day in more than frivolous swimsuits that could barely cover and contain our charms. When the laughter and banter subsided, I said I'd better go get Mike. I guess I'd have to wag my tail a little and suck up a little, because it seemed to me that Mike was in a bad mood when he left. It wasn't a big deal, though, so he'd get over it. As I approached the house, I had a thought that almost made me stop. It occurred to me that maybe Mike remembered how his mother had often embarrassed him as a child. Perhaps Yes, perhaps that was the emotion I saw on his face as he stood in the water, confused. If that's the case, perhaps I had made a terrible mistake, for my husband's childhood years had left a deep and traumatic imprint on his memory. After all, he still hasn't forgiven his mother and has essentially avoided any contact with her. I even felt like I myself talked to Mike's mother more often than he did. But I quickly put that thought out of my mind. I was sure that just a few gentle but hot kisses and my assurances that I loved him and that everything that had happened on the beach was just good-natured fun among friends would be enough to make Mike okay. As soon as I entered the house, I called my husband's name rather loudly and listened, waiting to see from which room he would respond. The response was silence, and then I headed for our bedroom. Strangely, he wasn't there either. Continuing to call for my husband and going from room to room, I looked all over the house, but I couldn't find Mike anywhere. Finally, I looked out the window and saw that our car was not in the parking lot. Now I wondered where he had gone. Even if Mike was angry with us, he had gone too far. It was just a joke, and he must have felt hurt, gotten angry over nothing, and ran away. I dialed Mike's cell phone number, and within seconds I heard his ringtone crackling in the bedroom. Of course, my husband's cell phone was on the dresser. What am I supposed to do now? How do I get in touch with him? Well, after a little thought, I decided that he would probably need some time to blow off some steam and would be back soon, so I walked back to the beach and joined the rest of our group. When I approached, everyone immediately turned to me, and there were questions from the girls about where Mike was, and when I told them that he wasn't at the house and our car had disappeared from the parking lot, a concerned look appeared on some of the guys' faces. My friends simply told me that Mike had probably taken the joke the wrong way, and it had hurt his ego, but that he would be back soon. Soon, everyone forgot about the missing Mike, and we went back to playing ball and enjoying a nice sunny day at the beach. Mike. On the way home, I discovered that I had left my cell phone at the beach house. Oh well, at least no one will be able to call me anytime soon. Perhaps just that is the hidden good for me. Then I switched to thinking about my marriage to Lisa. How the hell could she think that playing this embarrassing prank on me in front of all her college friends would end well? After all, Lisa was the only person I had ever shared with, so depressing, embarrassing, and humiliating had been done to me as a child, creating situations like today. No, it didn't seem like an accident. She must have done it on purpose, I thought. But why would she do it? Did Lisa secretly want to humiliate and embarrass me? She knew that my reaction to such a prank would be negative. Couldn't she really think that I would just shrug it off and laugh with everyone else at such a public shaming? If I did, I am sure that in the future, Lisa and her friends, and especially women, would remember this incident at every new meeting and laugh heartily at my shame and humiliation. I would constantly remember it, reliving all those horrible emotions anew each time. And I realized that I could never be around her friends again. Thinking back over the previous days, I concluded that Lisa had discussed this particular hilarious surprise with Angie, and quite possibly all the other girls. She then planned its organization, bought dissolving swim trunks, hid my regular ones from me, and then tricked me into wearing the ones that were to disappear in front of everyone's eyes and to everyone's delight. I'm sure all the women, pulling on their swimsuits and grinning ear to ear, were chirping animatedly about it in anticipation of the comical spectacle right after sending us guys ahead to the beach. Although, no, I thought, Lisa probably couldn't help but realize that her joke would have consequences. So did she have so little respect for me and my feelings that she didn't care if such a prank hurt me? What if she wanted to insult me on purpose? But why would she do that? What if I had done the same thing to her? Planned a weekend away with friends, and then, at the most unexpected moment, pulled off her bathing suit, leaving Lisa completely naked in front of the whole group while we all laughed at her. Would she have just said, "Ha-ha, very funny," and joined in the fun? I bet she wouldn't. I bet she would have been deeply humiliated and extremely angry with me. So, no. I think my wife thought it over carefully and decided she could get away with it. So what was I supposed to do now? Should I just accept what happened on the beach? Forgive and forget? Well, I wasn't a helpless little boy anymore. I was a grown man, and this time I could defend myself. Defend myself in the way I thought was right. to preserve my dignity, not become an object of ridicule in public. I wasn't going to give up my self-respect and spread myself out as a pliable doormat in front of anyone. As soon as I got home, I immediately started packing some clothes and things I might need for the next week. I went into my home office and picked up my computer, birth certificate, passport, and other important documents. Then I got in my car and drove away. I didn't know how long I would be gone, but I had absolutely no desire to see Lisa or talk to her anytime soon. Lisa. Several hours had passed, the day was drawing towards evening, and Mike still hadn't returned. It was already starting to get dark, and we started packing up our beach gear to head home. I was starting to get a little worried about why Mike never came back. We had to pack up and leave the rental house in an hour. When it was time to leave, I, being without a car, talked to Angie and she said she could give me a ride home. By this time, I was more than anxious. To add to my anxiety, a somewhat awkward situation arose as we were all saying our goodbyes. I noticed that some of the guys felt awkward averting their gazes, and some just walked away without even saying goodbye to me. If my friends were acting weird towards me, maybe I had really made a big mistake. Back home, I got my stuff from Angie's car, said goodbye to her, and walked towards the dark house. At first, I thought Mike had gone to bed, but when I noticed his car wasn't in the garage, I realized he wasn't home either. And since he'd left his cell phone behind, I couldn't call him anyway. Finding myself alone in an empty house, I became truly alarmed. Everything pointed to the fact that I had really screwed up this prank. Mike. I found a small hotel not far from my work and rented a room for the week. I felt like my blood pressure was still off the charts and I needed to find a way to calm down somehow. So I took a shower and settled down in front of the TV to distract myself and relax. The next thing I knew, I woke up with a jolt, and when I looked at the clock, I found that it was 4 a.m., so I got up and got ready for work. I usually got to work before the rest of the team showed up at 6 a.m., so there was nothing unusual about my now customary early wake-up time. Lisa, last night Mike never came home or even called me. My feelings vacillated between anxiety for the situation I was in and anger at Mike for overreacting. How could he do this to me? He'd just gotten up and left, and then he hadn't even called me, and he knew there was no way I could contact him. Obviously, my husband didn't want to talk, or he would have contacted me long ago. As I packed up and drove to work, I got a call from Angie on the way, asking me how things had gone with Mike last night and if I had been able to work things out. I told her that Mike had been out all night and that it had made me really mad at him. Angie asked me to tell her afterward about everything that would happen after Mike finally deigned to show up at home. She confirmed my own thoughts, saying with certainty that he had overreacted and that he had better get a grip and grow up soon. After I finished talking and tossed my cell phone on the passenger seat, I had an unpleasant thought. I thought I had really made Mike relive his worst childhood trauma. Thinking about it, I began to realize that I had done the same thing to him as his mother had done to him. I knew that even after many years, his negative emotions remained too strong because of what he had gone through because of his mother's parenting lessons. That is why Mike to this day has not forgiven her. In fact, he had cut her out of his life. I was also aware of the fact that Mike did everything he could to avoid seeing his mother. He never confronted her or gave her a chance to justify his actions in any way. Mike simply left her, went to college, and almost never came home. To this day, she still had no idea how horrible and disgusting his childhood years had been for him. Was Mike going to do the exact same thing to me? My God, what have I done? A horrifying thought burned through me, wreaking havoc and panic inside. I had to talk to him, convince him it was just a joke, a little prank among friends, nothing more. Hell, I'd been so caught up in it that I hadn't even thought about Mike's traumatic past, going headlong into organizing what I thought was supposed to be just a fun diversion. Mike. The visit to work was a positive and nerve-calming moment for me. I liked my team and we got a lot done on this Monday. When office hours were over and it was time to leave, I looked out the window and noticed Lisa standing by my car. I don't know how long she had been waiting there, but she hadn't noticed me yet. I asked one of the guys in the office if he could give me a ride to the hotel. I wanted to avoid meeting my soon-to-be ex-wife, and a coworker agreed to give me a ride. Lisa. I waited for Mike outside his work, standing next to my husband's car just to talk to him. I was determined to apologize for my bad taste in pranks and hoped things would get better between us again after that. But he never came out of the building he was working in. I waited for him until late afternoon, but in the end, when his car was the last one left in the parking lot, I had to go home with nothing. Or rather, I returned to a still empty house with a lot of depression in my soul and an unclear but looking rather bleak outlook. The next evening, the same thing happened again. On the third day, rather than wait for Mike, I wrote him a letter telling my husband how sorry I was for my stupid prank, apologizing for how stupid and ill-considered it had been, and that I only realized after the fact that it had been a very, very bad idea. "Please," I begged him at the end of my letter, "talk to me. Please don't shut me out as you would your mother." But I never received a reply to that letter. Mike. What's in these women's heads when they think that if they can have a heart-to-heart talk, everything will be okay and life will go back to normal on its own? I thought. After what Lisa had set up and done, probably in conspiracy with the other wives, what was there to talk about? She had somehow decided that humiliating me publicly was okay, even knowing all about my past. Well, if she thought it was normal, then what would be the next step? Would it be okay to have an affair behind my back? Then she could humiliate me even more by telling all her friends. If she didn't care about my feelings and didn't respect me, then why should I have rushed to talk to her while losing my slippers? And even if I suddenly agreed to it, what if during the talk I got so angry that I slapped her hard, the bruise of which would be visible to everyone around me? What would be the consequences of that? Was there even a chance that we would talk and our lives would blossom like a fairy tale? I decided that for me, all this verbal fluff and pouring from empty to empty was not the way to go. It was time to move on. It's been a year since I quit my job and moved to Colorado. Boy, am I in awe of this state. Everywhere you look, there is beautiful scenery. I managed a new team and we worked like a well-oiled machine. I'd been dating a petite brunette for 3 months, and the first thing I did was tell her why I'd left my wife. Several times as she listened to my story, tears came to her eyes as she felt my pain. My new girlfriend, in turn, told me that her college sorority sisters had also humiliated her during her studies. One night, they jokingly tied her to a tree, completely naked, in front of their sorority house. The helplessness, shame, and humiliation the young girl experienced at that time left her scarred for life. She eventually broke up with them, moved on to another sorority, and never recognized any of her former sisters again. If any of them approached her on campus, she would immediately turn away and walk away. The irony of what happened was that she, being the smartest girl in her former community, often helped the other sisters with their homework. Rumor had it that after she left because of her joke, the other girls' grades for the semester dropped so much that some of them had to retake their subject exams. So she and I were definitely on the same page and quickly hit it off. As we got to know each other better and told our stories from our dark pasts, we both vowed to never, ever intentionally embarrass or humiliate each other. If something like this had happened by pure accident, then we would have forgiven each other. But we both felt safe knowing that each of us would always have the other's back and support. Lisa. "It's been a year since I ruined my life," I once remarked on one of a long string of lonely days. My stupid and, as I now realize, not so innocent joke had destroyed my marriage and caused the husband I loved to walk out of my life forever. I never even had a chance to talk to him. I don't know why we women think we have a sacred and inviolable right to necessarily speak our minds. Everyone I've talked to since that ill-fated party has asked me, "Did you talk to him?" as if it were the most common thing in the world. I always answered, "No, he just didn't give me a chance." One of my male friends, upon learning the unseemly background of our breakup, summarized it as, "You humiliated him and he dumped you. End of story." And afterward added, "You should have thought ahead of time about how he would react to public humiliation." I searched for Mike for a long time, talked to his former employer, called his mother, and even tracked down some of his old friends, but no one knew where he was now. And even if they did, they probably didn't want to tell me. After a very short time, I lost my house because I couldn't make the necessary payments, and now live in an apartment with another woman from my current job. My friend Angie keeps telling me that I should move on with my life and file for divorce. She says that if my husband doesn't have enough of an adult attitude or sense of humor to understand and accept our little joke, then that says a lot about who he is, and I should be glad he's no longer around me. But the whole point is that I miss him every day. He and I were so good together. We loved each other, and I loved being his wife. We were on the cusp of starting a full family, and I really wanted to have children. Mike's children. Why was I so stupid? Why didn't I think about how Mike might react to my prank? Even for a minute before I went and embarrassed him in front of all our friends. I must have really stabbed him in the back and hurt him like hell since he'd walked out of my life and never looked back. The other day, I sent copies of the dissolution of marriage for abandonment papers to his mother's house, and she called shortly after, asking me a bunch of questions. I explained to her everything that had happened, and by the end of our conversation, she was crying hard. Sobbing into the phone, she admitted that she had never suspected that her public physical punishment had caused Mike so much emotional damage. At the end of the conversation, she asked what she should do with the papers, since she hadn't spoken to Mike in over a year. And after our difficult conversation, she didn't expect him to contact her anytime soon. I simply asked her to keep the papers in case Mike ever called. I cited my husband leaving me as the reason for the divorce, and since it had been over a year since he left, the court immediately granted my motion. After the collapse of our marriage, I only received a few $1,000s, which was all that was left of him after paying all the bills. Wow. What an amazing profit for me, I thought sarcastically. I'd thrown away the only man I'd ever loved out of a desire to laugh at his embarrassment. I had a wonderful husband, security, love, companionship, and we were about to have children. Now I was lonely, broken, and depressed. Mike. Wow, that's good news, I rejoiced. Today I received the final divorce papers from Liz in the mail, along with a long letter from my mother. I had sent her a Mother's Day card last month, so now she had my address in Colorado. I never talked to her since I left. Just one day I felt like sending her a card. I don't know, maybe I forgave her. And maybe someday I'll read the letter she sent me. But that day wouldn't come today. So I put the letter from my mother in the desk drawer in my office. Today was not the day for me. Now that I was officially divorced, I could ask the new love of my life to marry me. What a wonderful day!